afternoon. Welcome back to our last session for today. So for this session will be on how can operators and OTT platforms best collaborate in Africa. And I have the pleasure to welcome with us Stephen Watson, Managing Director at Discover Digital, Laurent Talibar, CDN Business Development Director, International Carriers at Orange, Wanda Mkize, Executive Smart Home and Content at Telco, and finally, Jan Platkis, COO at SABC. And I have the pleasure to welcome with us again, Tamima Ibrahim from Switch TV in Kenya. Tamima, the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, Shanna. So we just to thank our panelists for making the time for this conversation. And so in the next basically almost 45 minutes, we're going to be looking at how Africa is now becoming a major focus for OTT players and trying to also understand how the various players have been able to innovate in this particular space, and also how the content service providers are rising to the challenge. Then, so we'll be focusing the discussion into two parts. Firstly, kicking off with trying to understand the OTT SVOD platforms and how they're gaining momentums in Africa. And then later on, trying to understand how telco, content providers, and OTT platforms are collaborating on the continent. So maybe just to kick us off, trying to understand from each of our panelists, how are bundled services the key to deploying successful OTTs across the continent? Maybe let me start with you, Laurent.
Sure. Hello, Tamima. Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to tell you a true story about that and how Orange is facing this. So the example is in Ivory Coast, Orange Ivory Coast, who launched actually their own OTT offer with the scope of being, let's say, the gateway, the unique gateway for Ivorian subscribers, customers, the gateway for the TV, home big screen TV, but also any kind of OTT services, gaming, news, entertainment, and so on. Which means it includes the third parties offers like Netflix, StarTimes, Canal Plus, MultiChoice, or whatever. And be the aggregator for such. So they launched the product and unfortunately did not face or meet the success they expected, and were very disappointed about that. So they find out launching an audit towards their customer base that actually the customer journey to subscribe was painful. You had to go in and out of the app for paying actually, and the content you were to reach when getting in the app was just the one you could get anywhere. So there was no real traction, and therefore the success was not there. So what happened then? They set up a big action plan to make that work, and this is where it's getting very interesting in 5 points. First one is totally revamp the application to integrate the payment inside. This is very key. Second, produce their own content. That was, of course, unique and not available from any other platform. Third, integrate the must-have local channels that people were expecting. Number 4, create a real dynamic, animate the offer every week with events, specific offers to keep it really moving and alive. And last but not least, offer the best quality of service to the customers and a good video delivery, no delay, good audio and video, good speed that was achieved through the local CDN. So that was an immediate success because they reached around 1 million application download quite quickly. And as we can guess, 90% of that was mobile.
Very impressive. Maybe to you, Stephen, probably help us understand at Digital Entertainment on Demand, the type of business model that you've opted for, and of course, the objectives that have underlined these choices.
So I think, at its core, Discover Digital is a business-to-business operator. We try and assist broadcasters and telcos who are looking at the video space with a total solution. It's a very fragmented technology stack to make up a full OTT play. And then on top of that, you, as Laurent has mentioned, you've got to make sure the content offering is right and is curated properly for the target market. And when you bring the content and the technology together, and then the way that it's bundled and offered to the consumer ultimately has to offer a high value service that is convenient and easy for the consumer to understand and navigate. And so that's what we really do at its core. We work very closely with telcos who are looking at a white labeled solution where they want to drive their own brand and product. And then, of course, the Diode product was to assist those telcos in smaller jurisdictions that have got a very small base that don't necessarily want to launch a white label product. So, I mean, in this instance, particularly on this call, if we look at the participants, we have SABC and Telkom. And late last year, we launched the Telkom One service, where we brought the state broadcaster together with the leader in fixed line and operations in South Africa and a strong mobile player. And we've bought the local content, which Laurent was talking to, the really popular local channels, as well as a vast archive of SABC content, together with Telkom's aspirations in the video space around bundling data as a telco operator, to create a service that ultimately offers both a strong free offering and a subscription offering to the consumer. And so really, that's what we do. We sit in the middle and we bring our tech stack and we facilitate and assist in managing the entire solution.
And maybe to you, Wanda, just to understand at Telkom, what are some of the OTT services that you've deployed and what are the operational results? How are your customers responding to them?
Sure. So from a Telkom perspective, we've kind of looked at OTT both from a partnership perspective as well as the development of our own brand and proposition, which Stephen was just referring to. So as early as back as 2017, we partnered with the likes of YouTube, with the likes of Showmax, as well as DSTV Now, which is one of the two largest OTTs as such, or TV everywhere providers in South Africa. We then also have a very strong relationship with Netflix and are looking at extending all of those relationships as well. Last year in November, we launched our own OTT platform, having identified that there were definitely an underserved market in South Africa that would be looking for a more localized proposition and was not currently being served by the current OTTs that are within our market. And that proposition is called Telkom One, which was really an amazing partnership arrangement between ourselves, SABC, as well as Stephen, who really was the bedrock with regards to, and his organization in regards to supporting us from a platform, from a commissioning, aggregating of content, as well as just assisting the organization in managing that platform as a whole.
Okay, and maybe to you, Laurent, what is the impact of these additional services on your average revenue per user? Laurent, did you get the question?
Yes. So let's say that what it brings is more than, I cannot really disclose figures, but what I can tell is that providing a good OTT offering allows you to retention of your customers, liability, and also, yes, of course, you also widen your customer base, and you can increase, depending on the model, the ARPU. Yes.
Who's just joined us, help us understand what are some of the challenges that are triggered by the internationalization of OTT services, because now we know the reality and really the conversation on the continent is that we do have quite a huge number of borderless players.
Okay, that's for me again, Tamina.
Ian.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
That's for Ian.
Okay, so yes, internationalization of OTT content. Actually, I must say I belong to the international network division of Orange. And what we see, of course, there is a fierce competition between OTT players, and there is no more walled garden, you know. It's definitely a global competition. Videos are increasingly called upon, which are very more and more heavy. Also because technology is improving, the screen definition, deployment of 4G. So I would say technically there is a big challenge on the international bandwidth availability, which is rare and of course expensive compared to local delivery. And that brings big challenges on congestions, on cost, and of course of security. So the solutions exist, of course, for that, again, technically, with the impact on the business side of the things. So first is what I can disclose as a figure, as a number, is that Orange spends a year $1 billion investing in networks. International, it's Africa. So bringing content or connecting Africa to the rest of the world, but mainly really inside Africa to connect countries together and regions together to decrease the dependency towards US and Europe. This is one, and two, using a local infrastructure, a local CDN, also drastically improves your bottom line, because when delivering content through a CDN, which is local, you decrease by, I would say, between 85 and 95% the need of international bandwidth. So this is directly a cost impact. And last, there are some technical tools like web acceleration, which allows you to compress, or let's say work on the signal so that you consume less bandwidth.
Thank you for that. Wanda, do you want to add anything in terms of your experience as an operator at Telkom?
So, definitely, I think there's definitely an increased requirement with regards to international content and the viewers wanting it. But what we've also found on our end is that it tends to be a balance in a lot of ways, because local content still resonates with a lot of our audiences, and that's why our partnership with SABC. But even with the OTTs that we've partnered with, we've also seen them including a lot more localized content in their offering, even as far as Netflix, which has had a number of local originals being produced within the South African market. But as a broadband provider, what Laurent is referring to with regards to, making sure that we build from a CDN perspective and ensure we do a lot of caching to manage the traffic so that we are able to manage the demand, is a key focus area for us as specifically the leading fixed broadband telco. So we've done a lot of that, caching around content, increasing our CDN capacity to ensure that we are able to provide our consumers with the best content when they want it, whether it's local or international.
Okay, and to you, Stephen, now as a content provider, what strategy have you deployed to make sure that you stand out in an increasingly crowded market?
I think, again, our role is to really understand the strategies of our partners who we're looking to assist. So obviously, if it's a local broadcaster, they have their own content and they're looking to increase the access to that content in an OTT space. If you look at the strategy of the likes of Telkom and other players on the continent, you spoke of international players coming into this market, and obviously Netflix was one of the first movers to join Showmax and DSTV now in the OTT space. Amazon Prime's here. And if we fast forward 18 months, we fully expect that Disney Plus will be here, HBO Max, Universal's Peacock service, they'll all come into the market. The British service is coming, BritBox is coming here this year. So you can see a lot of international players starting to look at the continent. But the reality for a telco operator is that none of those partners are going to have an exclusive partnership with you as a telco. And every telco ultimately, particularly for their smart home or their fiber solution, is going to want to resell those services, offer carrier billing and the like. But it's really the local content play where I believe the telcos and the broadcasters are able to, A, gain market share and really differentiate themselves. Whether that's in partnerships like Telkom and SABC, where they're partnering to get the content out there, or actually in original productions in both short and long form. And I think the key thing is that when you look at a telco, are they a fixed line operator or are they a mobile operator? Because at the end of the day, these services are successful based on consumer uptake and the local spaces where they need to play. You know, I've often said, if you look at the investment of the top 5 international studios in the US market, what they spend on original content per annum, there's only 4 countries in Africa that have a GDP greater than that. So you've got to focus on local, you've got to focus on your price point, but equally as a telco, you've got to understand that your mobile consumer may be looking for more short form content that's easier consumed on the go, that isn't necessarily bandwidth intensive, but your consumer who's sitting on a fiber to home or an ADSL line in a gated community with an uncapped line with decent line speed, he wants a rich experience, and he or she wants to be able to choose from Netflix to Amazon to Showmax to any other service and potentially swap between the two. So you have to play in both spaces, but I don't think the market has ever been ready for the local broadcasters like SABC and our other customer, Namibia Broadcast Corporation, to take their product and to start to get a foothold in the OTT space. Their need to partner with telcos is that bundling strategy, adding data and other payment solutions to the overall ecosystem. And likewise, I think for telcos, when they look at this ever-expanding video space, from free VOD and AVOD YouTube platforms all the way up to premium kind of $9 plus services, they still need to find their own USP amongst that. They have to have a unique proposition, and that's where really the strategies are focused now.
Okay. And maybe to you, Ian, as we talk about having a USP in the marketplace that is quickly becoming very crowded, so what are some of the content genres that you believe should be prioritized, especially when we are talking about the localization of content?
Yeah, so as a public broadcaster, I don't think it's so much the genres, I think it's what is more popular. So what is more popular is obviously what is more exploitable across different platforms. So we have the most viewed content. And so those are the content that actually every OTT provider is after, basically. So our passion is to grow the local industry. And this is both a revenue and a customer protection. As you know, it's not just about on the customer side in terms of the audience, but also on the revenue, advertising revenue side as well. We're losing about 30% year on year to digital. And so for us, playing in this space and making sure we have the right content is critical.
Thank you for that, Ian. And maybe just to understand the South African market a bit better, what are some of the specific needs that you're seeing the audience is demanding for at the moment? To you, Stephen?
So I think, Ian's captured some of this already. The state broadcaster with its traditional free-to-air broadcast platform has built massive equity in some of the local soaps and shows, and they have a huge following. And I think Laurent touched on this, Wanda's touched on it. So, first and foremost, you've got to have a strong local partnership if you're going to go into the OTT space. And one of the best places to start, of course, is in a free offering with the local free-to-air broadcasters. And I think that telcos and broadcasters can come together a lot to manage the cost and operations of their OTT platforms and to make sure content is accessible, whether that's TV and radio or both. But again, if a telco was to ask SABC for exclusivity, the short answer is that's not within their own strategy and within their own mandate. So, fast forward a year, maybe all the telcos in South Africa are carrying SABC content, and SABC has its own OTT platform. So the question then you have to say to yourself again is, how do you stand out? And how do you differentiate yourself as a local player in this industry? And that comes again in terms of your own partnerships, the way you package and bundle content, the target market that you're looking for, and really understanding your own base and what they're looking for. That's not too difficult to achieve, just with basic research and engaging your base. And then, you know, we talk about the rolling of the Rubik's. You know, there are very few successful SVOD services in Africa today. The graveyard is pretty full of those who've attempted, those who've gone big or gone home, those who've kind of leopard crawled in. But a lot of those have been triggered off mature market strategies. And I think, you know, we say it again and again, this is Africa, this is not America. We're not Disney, and we don't switch on and 24 hours, you've got 10 million subscribers. So you've really got to watch the cost of your base. You've got to watch the cost of your investment, and you've got to continually analyze what people are doing on your platform, what content they're consuming, and then add more and look to differentiate. And again, I think the key thing here is what's necessary, what's you know, applicable to a smart home environment versus a mobile environment are completely different. So I noticed the panel before this spoke extensively around advertiser-funded free VOD, free services. And if you talk to any telco and you look at the traffic of YouTube across their network, there's proof that that VOD, particularly free VOD, works, and that the consumer, if they like your content, will find a way to consume it, irrespective of the cost of data. And I know that this keeps coming up in these conferences that, you know, Africa is slow to get scale in OTT because of the cost of data. We're no longer in the top 10 of costs of data in the world. And even if you look at telcos who've zero rated the data historically, it hasn't changed the result of platforms that have largely carried Hollywood content. So you really you've got to find the right combination. In short, if you can find content that's socially and culturally relevant to your audience, whether it sits behind a low price wall or it's free and ad funded, they will find a way to consume it. And it's finding that sweet spot and being able to differentiate yourself that will make you successful in the African market. And I think last but not least is this is not just focusing on the South African market. It's wrong to assume that content that will work in the southern parts of Africa will work in the east and the western parts of Africa. So your hyper-local strategy has to take on board each market and the nuances and the appeal of the content to the consumer in each market. So we know how successful Nollywood has been, but Nollywood doesn't work everywhere. At the same time, if we're looking at Swahili content for the Kenyan market, it's not necessarily going to travel across borders. Some content does, but certainly not all of it. So your African strategy has to be local in terms of Africa, but hyper-local in terms of each market that you go into. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. Sorry, you're on mute. I'm not hearing you.
Great insight there. When it comes to content discovery and recommendations, so what are some of the innovations that you've seen being implemented in the market? And maybe let me throw this to you, Wanda.
So I think, you know, the exciting thing about content is about how you present it through. It's the experience that has been happening within the market and how customers get to interact with those platforms. And I think one of the key areas and the focus areas and the learnings that we've kind of looked at is how platforms such as Netflix have done this. And looking at the originals and the content that they create and how they present it back into that market. And I think from our perspective, it's been a key learning on how we take that and adapt it through to the market that sits in. But I think, as Stephen has said, one of the key learnings also for us is that this is Africa, and what may work in other markets is not necessarily what will be coming through to the different markets. We found that, particularly on our platform, some of the things that have really catapulted some of the content that has come through and the visibility thereof has been that joint communication that happens with ourselves as well as the SABC. We've had some sporting events that have whilst playing live on SABC, have also gone on our platform, and consumers understanding that they've got the opportunity to either catch up or alternatively watch it whilst on their go, just gives them that visibility. So it's about reaching the audiences in the right way. It's not just your platform itself, but also how you communicate that content across the different avenues and platforms that become available to you. So it's really key in that way. And it's got to be focused with the consumer that you're trying to achieve at the end of the day. And with us, the really reason for the partnership with SABC is because it's the consumer base that we're looking at targeting, and being able to communicate through to that base has been most successful for us than just your traditional digital platforms.
Laura, what are some of the innovations that you've implemented at Orange?
Let's say that what we, on my side again, what we try to bring to our affiliates in the 16 countries where we are present in Africa is to bring them the data for qualified data for them to monitor, understand, and adjust their content offering and the way that they propose it. I mentioned at the beginning that the animation was crucial, provide new content, new offers in terms of marketing offers and then content offers. So it's key to always, as Steven said it, and also Wanda, you have to be in touch with your base and then see how it moves, how it evolves, and how you can, having the necessary information to monitor that, adapt your strategy to meet the expectations of your customer base.
So obviously now, thanks to the OTT services, we now have a bit more accurate data that we can rely on. So to you, Ian, how has these findings from the data that is available influenced user behavior and perhaps even helped design your content strategy at the SABC?
Yeah. So obviously from being a public broadcaster and, you talk about innovation, that's our game, so we've got to come up with innovative ways of attracting the market, and having the most viewed content shows that we are doing that. So it's how we do it. So there's two ways of doing it. One, we develop a strategy, a content strategy in terms of what we want. But the other, it's not possible to know everything. So we do rely on unsolicited offers, for example, where people come to us and challenge our thinking and present new and other innovative content and strategies as well. And so we do consider those as well, and we see how it fits into our strategy, if we need to revise our strategy. And in that way, we make sure that we remain innovative and certainly in demand.
Okay, and maybe to you, Stephen, how has this influenced your content strategy?
I've referenced it earlier, and it's really great to see the other panelists agreeing. I think the most important thing about understanding the OTT space is that launching an OTT platform is not just a tick box exercise. It's not about finding all of the technology from whichever vendor you choose, adding your content if you're a broadcaster, or licensing content if you're a telco, and switching it on and sitting back and expecting to build a pay TV model that's going to bring you wealth overnight. It's just not that simple. It's a continuous assessment and analysis process, and as Laurent said, in an animated way. You've got to have an always on approach. This is very different to the traditional way of marketing. You've got to be engaging. You've got to be continuously reminding and recommending to your base of what's coming on. And then you've got to measure that. And that's the beauty of an OTT platform, which is different to the traditional broadcast, where you've got a push service over satellite and no return path. In an OTT space, you can measure exactly what time people are consuming, what they're consuming, how much did they consume, which page did they stay on, for how long did they stay on, where did they drop off, where did they fall off. And you've got to take that data and you've got to analyze it. And then you've got to adapt your strategy. So the key thing here is remaining agile. And then B, you've got to then continuously engage and recommend. And if you look back at the history of those players that have launched in the African market, typically they've gone out, they've had a content budget, they've allocated that entire spend over a 3-year period, locked themselves into 3-year licenses with big MGs, and they've switched it on. And they haven't had the room to remain agile. There's been no budget that's been kept back to focus on what is working. They're locked into long-term agreements, and that has to change. And you know, that's a real strong point of Africa, is that you've got to be able to shuffle your content stack. You've got to, as Laurent mentioned, look at the way people are navigating your application or your website. And just that as a point is, you know, the device that is utilized to consume content the most in Africa are still websites. Very few people, well, not very few, but people are still conscious of the 20 megabytes that it'll take to download a mobile application. So you mustn't ignore the engagement that you have on your website and your Mobi site. We often see a lot of focus going onto the application, and the website experience is poor, but actually that's your, you know, it's the front shop, it's the front window to your shop. You've got to continue and continuously analyze these things. Obviously, if you're in a fiber to home market, then the big screen play becomes relevant. The Android boxes, the smart TV applications. So you got to make sure all of those boxes or colors in your Rubik's Cube are actually aligned with the audience that you're trying to reach, the devices that they're going to consume on, the habitual manner in which they consume content. So if you're going to prompt them half an hour before you know is their habitual viewing time. And that's a continuous process. And I think often what we see is, you know, people have gone out, they've procured the technology, they've procured their opening stack of content, and they switch it on, and it doesn't work. And that's because it is a continuous process. It takes work. And I think the key takeaway here, and I often say this, is don't go into the OTT space, whether you're a broadcaster or a telco or a sports body, if you're not in it for the long haul, and your shareholders and your backers don't understand it's a long play. This is not, as I said, the American market, that you switch something on and you get 1 million subscribers overnight and you watch the cash roll in. It takes time and effort, and you've got to really be sensitive to the nuances in each of the African markets that you launch in.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And now, just to understand some of the technical challenges that perhaps you have had to work at, and the kind of solutions you've put forward, especially when delivering OTT content, to you, Laurent.
Yes, so to answer that, I would propose to get in the customer's shoes. So what are the pains actually that you face when you consume OTT? I mean, we will do that, maybe not every day, but very, very often at least. So the main pains are latency. You click forgetting your content, you wait and wait for forgetting it. So this is the first one. Second is, you got it, but the video is freezing, you have bad quality. That's also the second big pain, I would say, for any customer, that we are all. And the last one is just the black screen. You don't have access to the service. There are many reasons behind that, and I will go through them. So all these pains actually are addressed by a CDN, a content delivery networks. And it's good to know that today, 70% of all internet traffic worldwide is delivered by CDN. So it can be private CDN by Netflix, for instance, or Amazon, or Facebook, but there's also public CDN, which are used by many content providers and to deliver the content. So how, and this share, the 70% are increasing. So this is why CDN is key to, let's say, tackle these issues and pains. And because, as you know, the concept of the CDN is to have the content stored locally close to the users. So when they will consume and ask for the content, they will get it in a very good way. So that will allow to tackle the latency aspect. And also at the same time, as I mentioned, the CDN allows to decrease by 90% the usage of international bandwidth. So that's good for the telco pocket, of course, and the content provider pocket, but also for their final consumers. It let's say shorten the path between you and the content, and then brings you more, let's say, speed and also security in terms of delivering the content. then, and the last point, the black screen. So this is security actually, because we could see it increase a lot also during the pandemic. The attacks, it's hospitals, it's TVs, it's any kind of business which are attacked by pirates. And let's say the easiest kind of attack is DDoS. So it's you have a huge number of requests to connect to, for example, Telcom application or SABC.TV, and this crashes your servers, and the real users cannot access to the content. So this is also key to address that when deploying an OTT, and it's very important to integrate that from the beginning to your, let's say, project. So let me say a word on our CDN that we have deployed in Africa. So it's both for serving our affiliates, so in 16 countries in Africa, where we have, let's say, dedicated CDN for their usage. I understand Telcom also deployed its own CDN to manage it, master it completely. And on the other hand, we have, let's say, a public CDN, which is accessible to any content provider deployed in the, we have almost 20 instances. So in South Africa, in Western Africa mainly, but also Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana. And this enables us to protect, so to serve in the best way the content to the final users, be close to them, and protect the content and the access to the right people. So just for instance, we deployed this, or we have customers embarked on our CDN in Western Africa, Côte West, TV5, but also AMG, a small player in South Africa. So we can have, it can be local players, it can be global players, but all of them need actually a CDN to tackle the issues I mentioned at the beginning.
Okay, and Wanda, what's been your experience with this at Telcom?
So on our end, it has really been one of those challenging but exciting opportunities that we've kind of looked at it as an opportunity to really just showcase the strength and the power that we may have as a broadcaster, well, newly broadcasting from a Telcom One perspective, but also very much so from a Telcom perspective. So from an infrastructure, we've definitely, our sister company, which falls under the Telcom group, through OpenServe has made huge investments within the CDN structures, as well as BCX as one of our companies as well. And we look to them to support us specifically around the international traffic that needs to take place. And as we grow as Telcom One, we're really looking at those opportunities to try and get a wide vast of consumers or customers onto the base, so that we're able to showcase the power and the strength of our services that we offer.
Okay, and maybe Stephen, as someone who offers the OTT service, so listening to the operators and some of the things that they're putting into play, how has this impacted you as a service provider?
Look, I think, one of our strengths has been that we offer our partners either the opportunity to manage the entire ecosystem or components of it. And, if I look at the CDN, we work very closely with Telcom on the CDN and the CDN strategy, to make sure the consumer delivery is there and all of the things that Laurent has touched on, we have in place, and then advancing that and keeping abreast of the technology as we look at advertiser-funded content and the tech that we need to swap out adverts and look at dynamic ad insertion and the fulfillment of that on the CDN side. But I think overall, what we do is we bring all the components together. So the platform, the CMS, the DRM, the CDN, the ingestion process, the content workflow process. Because at the end of the day, if the group CEO of Telcom, CIPO, calls at 11 o'clock at night to say something's not working, I don't get to say, well, that's not me, it's the CDN, or it's not me, it's the DRM provider. we're wholly accountable to make sure all of those components are integrated into a seamless solution to make sure the consumer experience is correct and the content security meets all of the international standards, and we optimize the CDN. I think the great opportunity here is that, you know, Telkom's building a service that goes beyond their own utilization and looks to extend it and bring other partners on board to pass on that optimization. On the same side of that, with Centec and SABC, we assist them to deliver all of their radio streams. So if you click play on any one of their radio websites, that goes over our local CDN and infrastructure to ensure that that's all local and is on a local RAN-based model. And I think, you know, often the big challenge as international players come into this market with a hard currency, and we're dealing with, you know, particularly soft currencies that have a tendency to be volatile. It's very difficult for broadcasters and telcos to model the overall cost of running the service. So we try and make that more predictable and easier for them to model. And they can literally provide a fully managed and supported service. And that's what we really try and do, is we don't see ourselves as a standalone component of the overall system. We bring it all together, including the content, all the way through to the call center, training, call center support, reporting, royalty settlements to the various content providers that make up the whole system. And in some cases, that can be hundreds of different licenses. We manage that whole system. And therefore, our partners know that there's a single center of accountability. And we can stand up and make sure in each of those areas we have the best of breed technology partners who are most importantly evolving, because the tech stack that you needed 2 years ago is radically different to the tech stack you need today. And then importantly, again, you've got to take on those African nuances, which are vastly different to kind of the mature platform plays.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Ian, anything to add on this as we're talking about CDNs and maximizing security?
No, look, it's obviously very important for us, especially in our strategy, and not just having one. We'll have our own, plus we utilize others as well. So the security and the protection of the content is critical. Yeah.
Now, we know that access to the internet and data costs is still one of the largest challenges that we have to overcome in sub-Saharan Africa. So maybe just to understand, what are some of the strategies that can be deployed, especially to lower the cost of data for streaming users? Let's start with you, Wanda.
Yeah, I think, you know, as Stephen has said, it's really a hot topic and a lot of conversation that has taken place, but I think a lot has already happened within our markets that are addressing some of the data concerns that are there. As I indicated earlier, we on the Telkom side really were, as we were implemented, and our strategy has been being a data driver when we get into mobile. So our propositions are very much about data focused and allowing and making it more accessible to customers to utilize data by creating different propositions. So in 2017, we implemented a streaming proposition that basically with each one of the propositions that you purchased, you would get an allocation for streaming. In that way, it was making it much easier, making streaming more accessible, and that formed our partnership with the likes of the Netflix, the YouTube, as well as your Showmax as the local propositions in South Africa. But the prices have definitely been going down bit by bit. We are definitely one of the most competitive within the data space, and for us, it's about making it. It's about bundling our data products with bundling our broadband services with other product propositions so as to make it easier for consumers to come through. One of the key things that we did when we launched our product now, Telkom One, is we made the subscription and a portion of data available. So the consumer didn't have to worry about, I pay for a subscription and then I also need to worry about the data. So at least there's some data that they are getting with the subscription so as to make it much easier for them to consume and alleviate the worry. But also what we've done is being able to have our own platform, we were able to, with the assistance from Discover Digital, make sure that we create bundles or create the product proposition that makes it more efficient to watch it. So we are able to give you a lot, you can actually watch a program for much less data than you've had previously. And that's really been where our strong focus has been, making it easier, focus more on the content proposition, take away the anxiety of the data by virtue of bundling it with the services that we provide.
Okay, and maybe to you, Laurent, what's been your efforts at Orange towards addressing the issue of cost?
Yeah, so I mean, I totally share what Wanda just said. I mean, one is to purchase the video, access the right to do it, and then you have to pay for the bandwidth. So that's another pain for the customers. So for sure, it's key to find a way to bundle that. So you have different kind of relationship when you talk to Netflix or when you talk to your local TV. You don't have the same package, let's say, that you can put in place. But just maybe an example that we developed in Senegal, actually, where our affiliate is producing content. So actually, the content has different lives. The first one, of course, will be paying. So it will be, let's say, in SVOD. It could be on the, yes, certainly on the Senegal, Orange Senegal offer. Then you get money for that. Second live will be maybe on, let's say, a regular live TV with advertisements on it. And then back to maybe mobile, the AVOD, the last live of the content. And that allows you, depending to address different markets or different, let's say, segments of your market in a different way to monetize, let's say, get a minimum of revenue from what you produced, and then get additional ones through the different ways, live TV and AVOD. So that's an aspect. And last one, Orange also is putting a lot of efforts on Orange Bank and Orange Money, which is also a very key, as I said at the beginning, to from the beginning include the payment in the customer journey, and let's say make it as smooth as possible. Also on this part, let's say on the very technical aspect of the thing to pay for your package.
Okay, and we just hear from you, Stephen. What's your opinion in terms of some market evolutions that could help lower data costs, especially in Southern Africa?
Look, I think if you're looking at future-proofing the video delivery ecosystem as your content becomes popular and potentially starts to place a strain on the core networks. You know, in Africa, there are some very mature networks, but there are also some immature networks. So I think that, you know, future distribution might be using satellite to distribute the content to the edge of the network and bypassing the core. And there's already a lot of work that we've done in that space with various technology partners. So I think you've got to have that in mind. And I think right now where the market is that, you know, the consumption of content still fits pretty much well within the existing capabilities of the infrastructure. But there's no doubt that hybrid models will evolve, where you see, you know, hybrid boxes in the marketplace that can deal with the digital migration that's going on, DTH, and then of course, as streaming services continue to grow, you will see that roll out. I think Laurent makes a very good point that we mustn't ever lose sight of, is that, you know, in the African market, if you look at World Bank predictions, those consumers who are living on less than $2 a day, the poverty line is going to remain pretty consistent till 2030. If you look at markets like South Africa, despite that, you've got a 93% penetration of smartphone. Data prices are only going to continue to drop. There's no room for them to go up. So you've got a reducing bandwidth cost. And people look at that and they go, well, look, what do we need to take from that? 63% of the market is unbanked. So they don't have credit cards. So if you're launching a service that is in the SVOD space and you're looking to tap into the subscription revenue model, your partnership with telcos goes beyond distribution of smart devices, beyond bundling of data, but absolutely is to unlock their mobile money solutions, their carrier billing opportunities, using data as a currency, plugging into their loyalty systems to allow people to redeem content off the fact that they've spent money on a necessity. Data is still a necessity. It's a commodity that is a necessity for communications in Africa. And so you've got to look at those systems and really maximize your partnership. If you're just a broadcaster and you go into the OTT space and you're putting anything behind a price wall, you have to cozy up to the telcos, because they have unlocked the unbanked communities to a large degree, whether that's even through, in some markets that we visit in Africa, there's still physical scratch cards sold at traffic lights, which unlock data propositions. So COVID has accelerated a lot of the digitalization of all of this, but you've got to tap in and maximize those relationships. And if you can do that, then you stand the best chance of being successful.
Okay, so our time is almost up. And finally, as you wind up, Ian, any thoughts in terms of like how perhaps the market can evolve and lower the cost even further? You need to unmute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, obviously the reduction of the cost is more applicable on the telco side than on our side. For us, it's about bundling. For us, it's about having more than one service provider out there and enabling them and certainly not competing with them. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. So our time is up. Stephen, Ian, Lauren, Wanda, thank you so much for your time. Over to you, Shanna.
Thank you, everybody. So I'd like to take this time to thank everyone who actually took the time to connect to our platforms over those 2 days. And thank you once again to all our sponsors, speakers, attendees, and please stay tuned on our LinkedIn page and also on our company website for all our upcoming events for this year. Thank you all and have a good evening.